IVM.
Hello and welcome to this midweek episode of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. This is DJ, your host for this episode, and I'm joined by Ashwin Garg. Ashwin, how are you doing, man? How are you doing in the middle of the week? How's the week gone for you?
Pretty good, man. I was trying to think about where we are in the IPL, right? If you think about, this is overly technical and overly nerdy, but it's a 56-match tournament, right? So if you think about this being an ODI, we are just starting to get to the middle overs. And so I'm really curious to see, as you think about like people's excitement levels, the engagement on Twitter, Discord, even just how much we talk about it, etc. Is this now the period where things start to, slump a little bit? Because the first 10, 15 matches were also excited. The kind of balance after that, the last 10 matches were also excited. So I'm just wondering, I'm still super excited, but I'm just wondering if we are currently going through the middle over slump of the IPL, if you will.
So you think the consolidation phase where Kedar Jadhav is a specialist in ticking the singles along?
You have gone right into the specifics of the topics, my friend. Yes, consolidation phase. I'm not going to comment on the specifics of which players are good at it.
Yeah, so we will get into that. But how do you feel recording in the middle of the week, man? It's a little bit weird for me because we haven't got Varun around today, obviously, because it's really late on Wednesday when we record. How are you dealing with these 2 episodes a week? Are you enjoying it? Do you find it a bit stressful?
I really like it. I love the idea that end of the week episode, we don't have to cover the whole week because you don't get into as much depth as you'd like on specific topics when you're trying to talk about a week's worth of matches, especially with double headers on the weekend. But then the second is there's so much changes so fast in this IPL. So if you go back and listen to all our episodes, so many things we said seem so out of date, out of touch, etc. So I like the frequency. Obviously, it's added work, etc. But hey, we're lucky that we get to run this podcast, that people tune in to listen. So I'm just fortunate, I always feel fortunate that we have such awesome listeners and we're excited to be able to put this out.
Absolutely agree, man. And I love that we're doing it twice a week because as you say, otherwise it gets too much to fit into one 40-minute episode right over the weekend. Anyway, we've had some great matches. As Ashwin said, we're in the middle overs of the IPL, but let's do a quick table recap, right, before we get into the specifics of the games. Mumbai Indians have played 6 games, are sitting right on the top of the table with 4 wins, followed closely by our favorite team, Ashwin. The Delhi Capitals is in the top 2 and with a game in hand on the Mumbai Indians, man. How are you feeling about that?
Outstanding. Honestly, like we were second when we recorded the last episode. We are still second, obviously, since then one more win, which we'll talk about, but unbelievable, man. 8 points from 5 games. Just so exciting.
Yeah, it's great. And KKR is sitting third, and we'll come to that, how they got to that third place. They've only played 5 games. And the RCB is sitting fourth. So that makes up the top 4, followed by CSK, Sunrisers, Rajasthan Royals, and the Kings 11 Punjab right at the bottom of the table. So what better place to start off with than the bottom of the table clash that took place in the second half of Sunday, which was the Kings 11 Punjab and then CSK. So that was bottom of the table stuff. Ashwin, let's talk through that game. There are a few talking points there. One being KL Rahul's batting. Now, of course, we know that KL Rahul and Mayank have been dominating the batting charts, and KL Rahul's done that for many years. In fact, even in our preview, we talked about KL Rahul scoring tons of runs without Kings 11 winning, right? And Ashwin, is there an element of a little bit of individualism creeping in there? Because he scored 63 of 47 in that game. What did you make of that innings, Ashwin? And was it a match-losing knock in the final analysis? Sorry, it was 63 of 52 balls, actually.
Yeah, 63 of 52 balls. I think it's harsh, and I might be overly generous, but I think it's harsh to call it match-losing knock. He was batting for the selectors, etc. Because the truth is the selectors see what we see, right? If it looked like a match-losing knock to us, it looked like a match-losing knock to them. So I think that's a little bit harsh when you put individualism, etc., at the forefront. I think he played a decent knock. It was a runner ball. He wasn't striking as cleanly as he'd like. He managed to accelerate a little bit every once in a while. I think when you have Nicholas Pooran and Glenn Maxwell as 2 of your overseas guys, you then have Sarfaraz Khan, who has had a great domestic season. I think as the opener, it's fine if you're going at a runner ball because you are relying on the others to come in and hit big. So for me, the shortage in the Punjab lineup and why they're sitting bottom of the table is because nobody else has really stepped up. Pooran got played a decent cameo. Mandeep played a decent cameo, but nobody really went that big. So I can totally see the argument both ways, and somebody disagree with me and say Rahul was too slow. As an opener, to stay there, consolidate, take the singles while you have explosive batters coming later, I think is fine.
I'm going to test you a little bit on that one, Ashwin, because KL Rahul doesn't need to be that guy hitting the singles. He's a big hitter, man. He's a quick scorer. We saw him. He's got the capability of doing it. So what I don't understand, they ended at 178 for 4, and in the eventual analysis, that wasn't enough. But do you think he should have gone maybe a little earlier? Why was he playing so conservatively?
Yeah, it's a great question. And obviously we can't get into the insights of what was going through his head, etc. He did say the wicket was stopping a little bit. It wasn't super easy to hit. So I don't know if it was as much a choice to not go after it as it was just it wasn't being that easy. And he, as teams do, and we'll talk about CSK, I'm sure, but he backed himself to go bigger later and then got out. And so I don't know. I think in hindsight, you can look at it and say he probably needed a little bit more. I think you could also look and say at Dubai, 178 is not that bad. They weren't 50 runs short. They were maybe 10 or 15 short at that. And then they got pummeled by the opposition. But so I don't look at it and say the batting, honestly, is what failed. I think when you lose a match by 10 wickets, you could have probably put 10, 15 more runs on the board, but your bowling is where you came up short.
Fair enough. So obviously we've spoken a little bit about them getting pummeled by 10 wickets, but Watto and Faf came out and put on 181 in 17.4 overs, which is I think the CSK's highest ever partnership. It's the second highest total ever chased without losing a wicket. And I mean, we were talking last week we were talking Sunday, right? And that's how quickly things move. And within hours, they had proved their team selection, right? And Watto had come good, won the man of the match award with his 83 not out of 53 balls. Faf even scored more, but Watto won the man of the match award, right? So obviously the Kings 11 Punjab went to the bottom of the table there. But Ashwin, there's one more point I want to pick up on in this game, and that is it now time for Chris Gale? We haven't seen the universe boss so far in IPL 2020, and maybe it's now time that they bring out their big gun?
Yeah, so actually, if I'm Kings 11 Punjab, and by the way, they'll play Thursday, which is right around the time this should release, so we'll see what actually happens. The first change I'm making is actually Mujib. It's not, so to answer your question, I would probably bring in Gale as well. But the first quickest change I'm making is to bring in Mujib. Probably at this point for a Chris Jordan, who on paper is so good and does so well for his country, but has just been, for lack of a better way to put it, ineffective. And then I might bring in, we have to think about that. But maybe you drop a Maxwell or a Pooran. Maybe you drop Cottrell and bring in Gale and bring in one more domestic bowler. I don't know what the options they're going to be looking at, but I for sure would bring in Mujib, and I most likely would bring in Gale as well.
Awesome. So that answers the Gale question. So let's see what they do tomorrow, right? Thursday, whether we proved right or wrong. But that basically sent the Kings 11 Punjab to the bottom of the table. The Chennai Super King fans were finally... they actually had something to smile about, and they were looking a little bit worried for some time, but we're going to come back to that at the end of the show when we talk about their next game. But we moved on then to Monday, Ashwin, to Delhi Capitals versus the RCB. And truth be told, this is one of the ones that conflict me the most, really. You've got Virat on one side, you've got AB on one side, you've got Chahal on the RCB side, and then you've got all our boys from the Delhi Capitals, right? So, our Discord was full of lots of sledging. That we've got lots of RCB fans on there as well, and I really enjoyed this game, actually. So let's talk about it a little bit. First up, Amit Mishra, the Delhi Capital and IPL GOAT, went out with an injury. We saw him miss that catch, right, in the previous game. And Akshar Patel came in. So that was an enforced change for Delhi. And then there's all this chatter about the toss. What should people do after they win the toss? And Kohli won the toss, decided to chase, which I thought was what RCB should be doing because they're a good chasing side with that lineup. And Delhi would prefer to bat first. So do you think both teams got what they wanted?
I think so, man. I think you can either decide based on the pitches and previous results, or you can decide on who you think are stronger for you. And undoubtedly, RCB's batting is stronger. So they give the batting the tougher job, which is to chase. Same way Hyderabad believes their bowling has been stronger, at least for the last couple of years. And so they give their bowlers the target to defend. And so I could see it going either way. I think whoever won the toss, this would have been the outcome where RCB chased and Delhi batted first.
Awesome. And then with Delhi in, Prithvi Shaw, he went off like an absolute rocket. What a bullet train, man. 44 of 23. He looked like he was in a hurry, dude. What's got into Prithvi Shaw?
I think Prithvi is trying to... I think he's trying to distinguish himself a little bit from that kind of Sanju Samson, Rishabh Pant type of player who just is hit or miss, and some days they'll go big, some days they'll make a duck. But also that I'm not a Shubman Gill type of player who is much more pleasing to the eye, consistent, technically right. I think he's trying to find this piece in the middle, which he says, hey, I can hit these beautiful shots, but I also know how to go big and go after it, and I score much faster than my the Padikals or the Gills, etc. And, when it comes off, it looks good, right? He definitely plays some ugly shots where it looks like he's going to lose his balance or his footwork isn't quite there, but not as many ugly shots as Rishabh Pant. But hey, 42 of 23 balls. I think if you're punting and Shreyas and then call it Ashwin or Hane, senior guys inside, I think you've said, hey, Shikhar Dhawan is going to consistently give you 30 runs at a run a ball. We have said that on this show since it started for 3 years. And so Shaw's role is, try to just accelerate a little bit faster than that. You don't need to give us a 300 strike rate with the boundary every other ball. But if you can go at the 170, 180 type of strike rate, that's a really good place for the opening pair to be in the power play.
Absolutely. I'm looking at his stats this IPL. He's played 5 innings, scored 179 runs. Obviously, there were a couple of failures in there. Averaging 35.8 with a strike rate of 147.93. I think Delhi Capital will be pretty happy with that, right?
Absolutely. I think with the kind of middle order Delhi has, that's a great start from your opener.
Yeah, and you bring up the middle order, man. Pant supported Prithvi pretty well. Obviously, Captain Iyer didn't get runs in this game. But Marcus Stoinis, man, what a discovery he's been for Delhi. And against his old franchise, the RCB, Stoinis actually took off, scored 53 of 26. He got into a little bit of verbals with Saini, who went the distance a little bit. But is this the all-rounder that we've been waiting for? And he's done 250s now this IPL. So just proving that first game where he put in that man of the match performance was no fluke, right?
Yeah, I think this has been the revelation for Delhi. And no discredit to Shaw, Dhawan, Iyer, Pant, etc., who've done well. And of course the bowlers. But from a batting standpoint, Stoinis has been the revelation. We talked before the tournament, but we didn't have a finisher who could also bowl a few overs. And Stoinis has become exactly that. So credit where it's due. I said, hey, all his results have been in the top 3 for Australia or for the Big Bash. Maybe he won't succeed in the middle overs. Australia, there's some Australian pundits now talking about how Stoinis needs to more consistently play at 5 or 6 for his Big Bash club and for his country, so that he sets up for his country for the T20 World Cup coming up. That's pretty amazing to me. So I love it. I absolutely love that he has found a spot to thrive at 5, made some, couple of good 50s. He may have some off days, but really, really exciting because this is exactly what Delhi needed.
Yeah, let's talk about the RCB bowling as well, because I spoke about Saini, who went the distance, 3 overs for 48. Chahal didn't finish his spell. He went 3 overs for 29. But Washington Sundar, man, 4 overs for 20. And remember, he bowled his overs in the power play, right? Where Delhi had got off to a really, really quick start. How good is this guy in the power play? And why haven't they been bowling him before in the power play?
Yeah, he's sort of establishing himself as a power play specialist, if you will. And again, this is the role he plays for Team India, right? What did he bowl? I'm just checking. He bowled the 2nd, the 4th, the 6th, and the 8th. He bowled a straight 4-over spell and gave almost nothing. An outstanding spell. So for an off spinner, a kind of traditional off spinner, if you will, to be so consistently tight in the power play is unbelievable. So full credit to him. Glad that better late than never Kohli decided to use him in the power play. I think that's going to be their strategy ongoing until maybe one day he gets taken to the cleaners, but really, really exciting stuff. I'm very excited for not just him, but for Indian T20 cricket as well as a result.
Clearly, Kohli's been listening to the RCB fans who appeared on Edges and Sledges. But so Delhi got to 196, which we thought was a pretty good score. Padikal went early, but then there was some drama, Ashwin. And you know how we love talking about runouts at the non-strikers end. So why don't we talk our listeners through what went on with Ravichandran Ashwin and his good friend from Australia, Aaron Finch.
Yeah, Finch is at the non-strikers end. Ravi Ashwin in his colorful striped jersey to support some sort of paint sponsorship, which Delhi was wearing on Monday, comes running in with his normal action. And as he finishes his bowling action, the ball doesn't release. He turns around. Finch is a good call it 2.5, 3 feet outside his crease at this point. Ashwin gives him a stare, gives him a warning, and walks back to his crease. Just remember last year in the exact similar type of situation, the match was more close. But when he was playing against Joss Butler, he chose to inflict the monkard or the run out at the non-striker's end, as we prefer to call it, and got Butler out in a match critical situation. So very interesting here. He didn't, despite all the press, Ricky Ponting before the tournament talking about how I will tell Ashwin not to monkard, Ashwin saying I'm still going to do it. It's it's fair game. It's in the rules. He chose not to execute the monkard. But so DJ, I guess you tell me first before I keep going. Do you think he should have done it?
So I think we've spoken about this before as well. And for me, actually, it's the match situation which determines the level of the monkard, right? And so the lawyer in me is very much, it's within the rules. He's entitled to do it. The batsman needs to stay in his crease and all of that. But the cricket fan in me dies a little bit with the monkard every time. But I'm like, so Finch here, I think he should have done it because Finch is clearly stealing ground, right? He's clearly stealing. He's miles down. I mean, when Ashwin stops, he is so far down. Like, there is no way he can even make it back. Like, I'm looking at the stills right now, and I'll put a link in the show note. Ashwin is in his jump, and Finch is in the crease. Ashwin lands, and Finch is out. And he doesn't even turn back. And, I mean, there was literally no way he could come back. And we've talked about the Chemo Paul run out in the Under-19 World Cup, and that killed me a little bit because it was the last ball of, there was one wicket left, right? And he was out by mere inches, and Chemo Paul didn't even have the intention of delivering the ball. So I don't know, man. I mean, I think he should have done it here to send a message. But yeah, I don't know. The cricket lover in me dies a little bit every time we have a monkard. But
listen,
I guess batsmen just have to learn to stay in their crease, right? And we won't have that anymore.
Yeah, I have to quickly say, I don't think the cricket fan in you should die. I think this needs to become part of the game. Not to draw a parallel that doesn't exist, but in baseball, for example, there's a thing called stealing bases, where a runner has the right to try to take an advantage, but he does it with the risk that he could get out. He could get run out at a base if he's too far out. That same thing needs to apply, and make it make it a strategic part of the game. Let the runner take even more of an advantage, right? Move even more out.
And I agree. I think they should do it. I think they should make it so common that people stop doing it. Because with the Chemo Paul situation, right, the difference was it was an under-19 game. It was a game with a place in, I think, the knockouts on the line, right? And then this guy goes off celebrating like he's knocked a middle stump out. And that's what really got me. And maybe that's the only one that's really got me because it ended a game like that. And where we've seen monkards, we've seen monkards in the middle of the game. Like, this is right at the top of the game, right? And Joss Butler, critical moment, changed the game. I get it. But where it ended the game, and that's why all the chat last year was, whatever happened in the last over of the World Cup or something like that. So yeah, I agree with you.
I will just say, I think, I don't want to comment on specifics of Chemo Paul, etc. But I think it should be totally normalized. Batsmen should figure out how to strategically use their ability to back up, and bowlers should figure out how to strategically use it to get a wicket, and it's fair game. That's just my take on it. I don't see it as any different.
I agree. I think batsmen should learn their lesson.
Yeah, I don't see it as any different from a batsman saying, hey, I'm going to come down the track and try to hit you. It gives me an edge, but I take a little bit of a risk knowing I can get out. Same way, I'm going to run outside my crease. It gives me an edge to take that single, but I take the risk. So
absolutely agree. But I think the difference there is there's a little bit of skill in beating the bat, right? With the ball actually being delivered. What I struggle with is the lack of delivery of a ball here.
To be able to watch while you're in your delivery stride, coming in full speed, watching the batsman, trying to conceal the type of delivery, doing the round arm action, to be able to watch the batsman stop in your stride and quickly run him out takes skill too. We just haven't accepted that as a cricketing world, but I think it does take skill. So
I agree. For a quick spinner, it's a slightly different point. But again, I take your point, and as I say, it's within the rules. I totally get it. And I support Ashwin. I mean, he should have flicked the bails off. These guys are professionals paid to do this for a living. I mean, what are you doing wandering out of your crease, man?
Now, what I will say in this match situation, I think Ashwin has played it perfectly. Okay,
because Finch was batting shit.
Because Finch was batting poorly. He ended up getting out pretty quickly after. We ended up winning the game by a huge margin. I think just under 59 runs. Then he went on Twitter and posted beautifully saying, hey, treat this as a final warning. I'm not going to give any more warnings. I'm going to do it. So he's now said, you guys wanted me to warn. I've warned. For the rest of the tournament, I'm not going to warn. And then somebody else replied saying, hey, what about batsmen who aren't on Twitter and don't see it? He said, I don't care about the batsmen. I'm warning the press, the media, the people who are calling me out for spirit of cricket. He said, look, you wanted me to warn. I warned. We still won. We still kicked RCB's butt. And now he's opened up the debate. He started it. It's fair game now for not just him, but anybody to do it. So I love it, whether teams do it or not. I think Ashwin handled the situation masterfully.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. And what I really loved about that was he tagged Ponting in it. Right?
Yeah, I don't know if that's a career in the professional world. It's what we call the career limiting move, right? To speak directly back to your boss and say something negative. But hey, he did it.
Yeah, he tagged Ponting in it. And I think, he didn't need to warn anyone. He'd given everyone enough warning last year with Josh Butler, right? So I wonder whether Josh Butler just sitting there, why didn't he warn me if he was okay to give a warning? Because he must be feeling pretty roughly done. But anyway.
This Friday, Delhi versus Rajasthan, Ashwin versus Butler at Sharjah. It's happening, man.
Next game, strategic Munkad coming up, strategic run out of the non-strikers. And anyway, let's move on, Ashwin. We've spent a little bit of time on this as we love a good Munkad chat. Rabada 4, Nokia 2-4, and Aksar takes man of the match despite the Stoinis 50 and the Rabada wickets. Talk us through the Aksar spell, man. Why do you think he picked up the man of the match there?
Yeah, Aksar bowled 2 for 18. As a left-arm orthodox, he just, like Jadeja, his overs seemed to finish in like 8 seconds. He got Finch and he got Moeen, and Moeen at a time when he, looked set to unleash and try to keep the game alive. Rabada's spell was magnificent, but 2 of his wickets were lower order batsmen. Honestly, you could have given it to any of them. Fantastic spell of bowling from all 3. Ashwin bowled well too, by the way. But 4 for 24, 2 for 22, 2 for 18, just outstanding. I think Aksar just got it because he kept the overs a little bit tighter, but just an outstanding day with the ball for Delhi. A team that we have always said is going to win on the back of their batting. The 2 quicks from South Africa have been magnificent.
Yeah, and I think they've actually changed the game for us. But maybe we should move on now to that to the next game, which was the Mumbai Indians versus the Rajasthan Royals game. There were lots of changes for the Rajasthan Royals in that game. Tyagi played, Kartik Tyagi, if you remember, in the Under-19 World Cup, he played. Surya Kumar Yadav, outstanding knock of 79 of 47, man. He's had a great domestic T20 season. He's had a few low scores this IPL, including one in which he was run out by his skipper. But today, one of the sixes he hit on that day was just incredible. Of Jofra Archer, he gets hit in the face, and then the next ball he just kind of like leans down and scoops him over third man for 6. It was just, why aren't we considering him seriously for the Indian T20 team?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think there's a few guys in this tournament who are underrated because they play such an important role for their team. But Yadav has done it before for the Mumbai Indians, of course. Nitish Rana, number 3 for KKR. By the way, Shreyas Iyer, number 3/4, depending on the day, for Delhi, also outstanding. Now, he gets more limelight because he's a skipper. And he's a little bit of a bigger hitter. But for the most part, these are such critical, pivotal roles that these young Indian guys are playing. I just love to watch it. So I'm a big fan of Yadav and Manish Pandey, number 3 for Hyderabad. Right? So slightly older, but similar type of role. Arguably what CSK is missing as Raina's gone away. But I absolutely love Yadav's knock that day. Felt a little bad for him in earlier matches, but great to see him coming back to form.
Yeah, and he's a superb fielder as well, as we saw, right? He patrols that backward point area, diving all over the place, taking some great catches. So, I suppose we'll talk about this as we come to the Indian T20 World Cup squad when the next T20 World Cup will be played. But, there's almost a case for just having a specialist T20 team with all these guys in it, right? What is Shikhar Dhawan doing in that team, frankly? Why is he even a contender for that? We're playing an ODI team in T20s, but a conversation for a different day, perhaps. Moving on, Josh Butler scored 70, which was a nice innings. Good to see him come back into form. Bumrah took 4 for 20, almost saying like, you thought that this guy Rabada is pretty good. Watch me now. Takes 4 for 20, just absolutely fantastic. Mumbai Indians thrash the Rajasthan Royals and have a great win there. Ashwin, one point to come out of this is that Ben Stokes is nearly fit for the Rajasthan Royals, right? And for the next game against the Delhi Capitals in Sharjah, he's likely to play. Who goes out for the Rajasthan Royals in the next game?
Yeah, really tough question. I think, unfortunately, it's Tom Curran. Tom Curran has looked pretty good, both with the ball and the bat. He hasn't been great with the ball. And so I think they've brought in Kartik Tyagi. They'll make some other changes with the Indian bowlers, with Rajput probably not playing much more. Unatkat might come back in. But I think Tom Curran is missing out. Because if you look at Rajasthan with 4 overseas guys being Smith, Butler, Stokes and Archer, that is a rock star side.
Do you think Smith deserves this spot? I mean, some of the shots he's played have been outrageous, and he's just been slogging across the line. What's going on with him?
I mean, he's had a couple good knocks, right? He just said this last game was horrendous.
In Sharjah, like Sanju, Sharjah specialist.
So why is it different than to say does Smith deserve a spot versus Samson, for example, right? You could argue Butler's keeping.
Because Indian players more spots, no?
No, I get that. I totally get that. I don't think they will drop Smith proactively because he's the skipper. I think 3 or 4 more failures, and you might see Tom Curran come back in to bolster the lower order, play more Indian guys up top with Butler and Stokes in the middle order, and Smith might lose it, but I doubt it.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I think Smith needs to start scoring some runs again. He dropped himself down the order, came down at 3. Yashasvi Jaiswal played, but he didn't fare too well, so not great for that youngster. Hopefully he can bounce back from that disappointment. He has 2 low scores now. Ashwin, last game that we need to talk about this week, and it's the KKR versus CSK, and as somebody put it on Twitter, this was the feast for the batting order and captaincy experts, with Dinesh Karthik's team taking on MS Dhoni's team. Crucial game for both sides. They were both struggling a little bit. There was lots of criticism on Karthik's captaincy and the batting order in the last game that they lost against the Delhi Capitals over the weekend. And Tripathi came into the side in that game, scored a nice 36. And today he opened the batting. Today on Wednesday, he gets 81 of 51. And other than him, Ashwin, there was not very much else in that KKR lineup. Russell didn't score runs. Karthik himself didn't get many. There was not very much for Owen Morgan out there as well. The next high score was in fact 17. So let's talk through the batting order. Did you prefer this batting order, and what was Nareen doing in all of this? Or Narayan?
Narayan, I preferred Tripathi opening, no doubt. He's an opener. You said it in the last podcast. He's done so well at the top of the order for the Rising Pune Supergiant. Masterstroke to bring him back. Really happy. Very, very glad. I think Rana at 1 is a good choice. I think when the second wicket fell, it was like the 10th over or so, 8.1 if I'm not mistaken. And so at that point is when Owen Morgan needs to walk in.
Yeah, Morgan I couldn't believe that Narayan walked in at that stage. I
Morgan at 4, Russell at 5, Karthik at 6, and then maybe Narayan or Cummins at 7 or 8, right? That's your order right there. You just got to get over the idea that Narayan's going to give you a quick fire 50. If anything, he's going to give you at the top of the order. You said it. Teams have figured out how to pick him. I think just stop experimenting. They won today, or in this match, and so it's going to be a little bit forgotten, but it's in a world where they made the right call by getting Tripathi and Gill to open, very silly to have Narayan at 4.
Yeah, and I guess they'll justify it saying that the spinners were on, then he's strong against the spinners, but the field's already out by then, right? And we saw him hole out in the end. And so I find it surprising that someone like Brendan McCullum actually keeps going with this approach, because remember, he's sitting in the coaching staff, right? I saw him today making notes in his book, and just like, why is Brendan McCullum insisting on this when he's got all of this like batting arsenal at his disposal? Russell, Morgan, Karthik, Pat Cummins. Why is it a stats focused approach that's causing this?
It might be. I think it might be a let's be different and shake it up for the opposition captain, so we mess with their heads a little. More likely than not, Russell and Karthik haven't found form yet. And there's 2 ways you approach that. You say, okay, let's shelter them a little, or you say, let's give them time in the middle to find form. And it seems like Baz and Karthik himself have said, let's, shelter them a little bit. In this game, at least, tough to say. I don't know. I just hope they learn quickly.
Okay, and this is the point we've been waiting for in the whole podcast, right?
I'm shaking my head even thinking about this conversation.
Talk me through this chase, Ashwin. Talk me through it. And I'm going to ask you a question at the end of this. But talk me through what happened in this chase of not very many runs. They only got, the Kolkata Knight Riders only got 167 runs. Mm-hmm. The Chennai Super Kings fell short by 10 runs. But Ashwin, what happened in this chase?
I have no good explanation. Let me go through this for you. CSK, in the first match they played, or in the second match they played, they were chasing, lost by 16 runs, but were only 6 down at the end. Then they lost by 44 runs to Delhi, big loss, but were still only 7 down at the end. Then they lost to Hyderabad by 7 runs, close margin, but were only 5 down at the end. And today they lost by 10 runs, but were only 5 down at the end. So like the sports fan, the cricket fan in me, you said when you talked about the Mankad, the cricket fan in me and the sports fan in me died a little bit. And part of it is me thinking, like, I live in the US. I talk a lot to my American friends and colleagues about cricket and how great a sport it is. And I was just sitting here thinking, if this was a game I had chosen to sit down with people who had never watched cricket before and explained to them why this sport is so brilliant, I would have just been curled up in the corner saying, oh my God, I don't know how to defend my sport because it was just so painful. So I'm probably exaggerating or overreacting a little, but you cannot lose a match with a low total by a small margin and just not be all out. Just go for shots and get out. And if you lose all 10 wickets, you lose all 10 wickets. There will be people saying Dhoni knows how to get points. He'll get the points at the end. And then I will realize, hey, the net run rate was great because they didn't lose more wickets and they got close, etc. I get that. I just cannot. Like CSK chasing in this tournament, other than the 110 wicket victory, has not been a good advert for cricket. And you can argue maybe it's the bat is not coming, the ball's not coming onto the bat, maybe the pitch, maybe the bowlers in the opposition are doing well. But it has been horrific to watch. For me, you cannot fall 10 runs short of 167, which is not a huge total in Abu Dhabi, and still only be 5 down. Just go for it and get out and give, you have Shardul sitting in the dugout who's hit 6s before. You have Deepak Chair sitting in the dugout who's hit 6s before. You have Dwayne Bravo went unused, but the guys out there didn't even get out. So, all right, I'm done. That was my rant for the day. I cannot get over CSK chasing this year.
No, but what should they have done? I mean, do you think Kedar Jadhav firstly deserves a spot? And if not, who plays instead of him?
Yeah, great question. Look, Jadhav hasn't bowled at all this tournament, if I remember correctly, right? And so if he's not going to bowl or give you even a backup bowling option, I don't know if he deserves a spot. I'm going to go through the CSK squad probably in a little more detail to see who deserves his slot. But, Ruturaj Gaikwad is a young batsman who, has done well domestically, didn't have a great start here. So he's a potential option. You could play around with your overseas guys, bring in a Mitchell Santner who will bowl and bat a little bit. So, I mean, I guess they don't really have other batting options, let's be honest. But Jadhav just needed to go. I mean, we made fun of Kohli when he talks about intent in Test cricket, etc. When you have a chase in T20s, intent does matter. It just does. And so it disappointed me a little bit, man.
I have to say that if you were a CSK fan today, you would have been pretty comfortable while they were cruising at over 100 in the 12th over. And then you see Thala come out at number 4 today, right? And you're like, okay, this chase is done. It's going to be a boring game. I mean, I was obviously making jokes that this is definitely going to the last over. But, I mean, they just got choked. They scored 14 runs, I think, in 5 overs, which is, I mean, if you think about it, it's just an insane stat. In a T20 game, was it 14 runs in 5 overs or 14 runs in 3 overs? Whatever it was just, I mean, you're just like, how have they got away with that? But Ashwin, I'm going to ask you this question because on this show, obviously, I'm a Dhoni fan. You're the one that challenges me on this. So I don't have the answer to this, but I'm hoping you do. Where does MSD and the CSK, where do they go from here? I mean, imagine you're Stephen Fleming, right? And or you're N. Srinivasan. Where does this team go? You're sitting right now at number 5 in the IPL table, but you've played an extra game. So you're more than likely to drop further down and probably to the bottom of the table if Kings 11 get their stuff together. How is Dhoni going to get this team out of the rut that they currently seem to be in, particularly while chasing?
Yeah, it is a great question. And I think, look, they're going to do much more nuanced arguments than I'll be able to provide. They're going to go through data. They're going to go through stats. Like, what position should you stand while batting? Do you shuffle in your crease a little bit to open up, the offside, for example, for batters who have been hitting on the leg and things like that? I think there are two fundamental things. One, when you're in a chase, you got to just embrace, and it looks like it's getting close, and you have depth in the sitting in the dugout. You have to just embrace the hit out or get out mindset. And at some point, it is unacceptable for Kedar Jadhav. What did he end at? He ended at 7 of 12 balls. He should have been 7 of 8 balls and out, right? That's the reality of it. Swing at it, get out if you have to. I mean, we saw it happen with Tewatia earlier in the tournament, right? He found his form. So maybe they need to shake up the batting order a little bit. Maybe they need to just embrace this idea that if you get out, if you go for a big hit and get out, we will not hold it against you. Somebody like a Jadhav has to be more criticized by his team for 7 of 12 than by 7 of 8 out, right? And so I think that's their biggest change they have to make while chasing. Look, they've bowled okay. They haven't done badly. Say 167 against a very, very strong KKR lineup, or to restrict KKR to 167 is pretty freaking good. And so I think it just comes down to the batting and just comes down to showing a little bit more intent while chasing. But I don't know. What do you think they should do?
I think actually the culprit for all of this is actually Ambati Rayudu. That shot he played was pretty poor. They were in complete control of the chase. KKR looked like they had absolutely no clue of what was going on. And he kind of threw away the game for them. And I mean, it's the opposite of what you're saying, which is like you don't need to hit out when you've got the opposition under the pump, right? And I get it at the back end of the order. But I mean, Raidu getting out and then Watson getting out had 2 new men in. And that's the phase in which they couldn't score any runs because they opened out against, I think it was Narayan and Varun Chakravarti, both of whom bowled very, very well. I mean, Chakravarti went through Dhoni, man, incredible bowling. And he's never hit a boundary of Narayan either. So maybe KKR got their matchups perfectly because they held Narayan all the way back for the death overs, right? So that he could counter the Dhoni threat or whatever is left of it, I suppose, now.
And I have to give credit there. You're right. Karthik managed his bowlers masterfully. So it's very easy to criticize. We don't do enough of a job of giving credit. I think Karthik managed, didn't do great by sending Narayan at 4 for me, but with the ball, Karthik was really good in the field today. So glad to see.
What do you think about his beard, though? As a man who works for a company that makes shaving products.
Yeah, man. As long as he trims it and keeps it neat and clean, I'm fine with it. It'd be nice to see if he did shave, but just in case, if he decides to keep the beard, he needs to just make sure it's nice and trim.
Absolutely super. And what did you think of the Dhoni catch? That made me so happy, man. That one glove off, palms it up with the inner and then takes the catch. I was just so sad I wasn't watching this game with anybody else because I kind of like clapped so hard my hands were hurting for the next 30 minutes because I wish I had somebody to high five, but it's just me. Anyway, Ashwin, go on.
No, I was just saying great catch, right? Nice to see that Dhoni, the keeper, is still the magnificent keeper we know and love and has done so well over the years. I hope Dhoni, the batsman, finds his form just for the sake of the tournament. I've said publicly I want a new winner, so I don't want CSK to do that well. I don't love that Mumbai is doing so well, but it's great to see, and I hope I wanted the IPL to be close, and so for that to happen, CSK needs to pull up their socks a little because these matches, like I said, are a little painful to watch.
Were you happy where he came into bat today? 4?
I was, yeah. I thought he did well, and I would rather, just as a fan of the game and of the sport, etc., I would rather he come in at 4 and perish for 11 or 12 like he did, than come in at 6, get 46 off 36 balls in the end and say, oh, we were 10 runs short, but he didn't show enough at 10. I would much rather this.
And I think there's no better note than on which to end this midweek episode, which has gone on a little longer than we expected. It's just gone past 11:30 where I am, PM that is. But Ashwin, it has been an absolute pleasure having a chat with you in the middle of the week. And I'm looking forward to our Rajasthan Royal special in later this weekend. But guys, you know where you can find us. We're on all the big podcast platforms. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at One Tip One Hand. Email us at contact@onetiponehand.com. Join our Discord channel. The link will be in the show notes. Guys, there's lots of amazing chatter going on. And yes, please, I mean, we asked for a 5-star review on Apple or wherever else you listen to our podcast. Please give us a 5-star review and write something nice about us as well, because, it helps other people find the podcast. And we really like putting it together. So hopefully you guys are liking it too. Anyway, keep on enjoying the IPL, and we will catch you with our regular episode with the Rajasthan Royals fans next Monday. Until then, take care and see you soon.
I hope you enjoyed that show. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Intel, for supporting us. So Jasleen Royal came on Storytellers and Storytellers this week with Vineet. It was a really interesting conversation. Do definitely check that out. Hamsuni Hariharan is back on the Pragati podcast after an extended absence. Hamsuni was one of the original hosts along with Pravan, but she was unable to continue. But we're glad to have her back. She's talking about her experiences since she left. She's been studying in China. Definitely check that out. You'll enjoy that. Abhijit Ganguly was on Cyrus Says a couple of weeks ago, and he had such a great time, and we were so happy to have him on that we asked him to join us for Cock and Bull, and he was on this week. Do check that out. And lastly, I'd like to mention our Tamil show. We've been doing a show called Kadai Podcast Ponniyin Selvan, hosted by Kavita Jiva. She has been phenomenal. She's rewritten the stories in a way which really, they speak to a modern audience. But Ponniyin Selvan is over, and she has started a new story, though. The new story that she started is Sivakamiyan Sabatham. I'm sure I mangled that pronunciation, and I'm sure you'll love it if you're a Tamil speaker. Do definitely check it out. And with that, I hope to see you again next week.
Have you ever wondered how successful people do their thing? How do they navigate the challenges they often face? Are you wondering about the future of restaurants, film, education, technology, and everything else in between? Hi, I'm Gauri Devidayal, best known for being one of the brains behind The Table, an award-winning restaurant in Bombay. One thing my life as a restaurateur has given me is the opportunity to meet with some truly inspiring people, most often just by chatting with strangers at the community table. And that's what this podcast is about. It's about learning the new dimensions of business and understanding how different people swim this sea. It's an opportunity for me to pick their brains and ask them all the questions on my mind, whether it's about learning from their past experiences or talking about future trends. Through their journeys, stories, and insights, I hope you too, like me, will come away inspired and energized. So come, join me every Wednesday with your favorite drink because this round is on me.